What if your high school wasn't originally built for students? What if the hallways people walk every day were once part of a military environment during one of the most tense periods in American history? And how many students sitting in class right now have absolutely no idea? Because hidden inside the history of Riverside High School is a past most people would never expect from an ordinary school building. A past tied to military preparation, wartime America, and a completely different purpose before the first student ever showed up. Today we're uncovering the hidden history behind Riverside High School in Indianapolis, Indiana. At first glance, it looks like a normal school, but decades ago, parts of the land and nearby structures were connected to military activity tied to the Heslar Naval Armory, during a time when America was preparing for global conflict.
Well, the former Heslar Naval Armory sat vacant in Indianapolis for more than 3 years. That's until a $10 million plus renovation transformed it into Riverside High School.
Which means long before students filled these halls, people connected to wartime operations moved through them first. And once you understand what this place used to be, you'll never see it the same way again. The history behind Riverside High School begins during a time when America was preparing for something much bigger than classrooms. The 1930s and 40s were tense years across the country. Military infrastructure was expanding rapidly. Training facilities, reserve centers, armories, buildings designed for discipline, preparation, and readiness. And Indianapolis became part of that larger movement. One of the most important locations connected to that era was the Heslar Naval Armory. Constructed during the 1930s, the facility was tied to Naval Reserve activity and wartime preparation. And visually, it didn't feel like a school at all. The architecture felt heavy, serious, structured. Everything about it reflected purpose over comfort. Because originally, it wasn't built for pep rallies or graduation ceremonies. It was built for military function. And years later, students would eventually inherit spaces connected to that history without even realizing it. Now, imagine the atmosphere in America during that time. The country was coming out of the Great Depression. Then global conflict started escalating, and suddenly, preparedness mattered everywhere. Facilities connected to military operations became extremely important. Young men trained there, prepared there, learned discipline there. Some likely walked through those buildings knowing they could eventually be sent overseas into war. And when you think about that, the contrast becomes almost surreal. Today, students worry about homework, attendance, sports, prom, graduation. But decades earlier, people connected to wartime preparation moved through similar spaces carrying completely different pressures. Same city, same ground. Entirely different realities. That's what makes places like Riverside so interesting. Because buildings absorb history whether people notice it or not. As the years passed, America changed. Indianapolis changed. Communities expanded. Neighborhoods evolved. And many military-centered facilities across the country slowly found new purposes. Some became government buildings. Some disappeared completely. Others became museums. And some became part of everyday life, including education. Eventually, Riverside High School became connected to land and structures tied to that earlier military era. And that changes how you see a school. Imagine being one of the first students attending there, walking hallways originally designed with an entirely different purpose in mind. Even older military-built spaces feel different. Wide corridors, heavy materials, tall ceilings. Everything feels intentional. Because originally, these spaces weren't built for teenage life. They were built for order, preparation, function. And over time, students unknowingly became part of the next chapter in that building's story. This is what makes school history so interesting. Most people assume schools simply appear one day. But many schools across America sit on top of older stories. Former military land, historic estates, factories, hospitals, battle-connected property. Places that carried completely different identities before students ever arrived. But after enough time passes, people stop asking questions. The past blends into the background. Students focus on everyday life. Teachers move through routines. Communities evolve, And eventually, history becomes invisible until somebody starts digging again. And Riverside is one of those places where the deeper story completely changes how you look at the present. Because right now, there are students walking those halls every day without realizing what existed before them. Not because the history is hidden, but because most people never think to ask, what was this place before it became my school? The strangest part about Riverside High School isn't ghosts. It isn't conspiracy theories. It's time. Because time completely changes the meaning of places. One generation sees military preparation. Another sees classrooms. Another sees memories with friends. And eventually, all of it becomes history. That's what makes schools powerful. They quietly collect generations, different people, different eras, different purposes, all connected to the same physical ground. And Riverside is one of those places where the past never fully disappeared. It simply evolved into something new. Most students will graduate without ever learning the deeper history behind the places they spent 4 years of their lives. But once you start paying attention, you realize schools aren't just buildings, they're timelines. And the next high school we uncover might have an even stranger story hiding underneath it.